Did you know? Questions on income and education indicators can help you secure easy marks in your economics exam. In this video, we break them down in a simple exam-focused way and show you how to answer a higher order exam question. Hello there and welcome to Homeschooling Adventures. Let's start with South Africa. Some people earn very high incomes, others struggle to meet basic needs. Education access has improved, but challenges remain. What does this tell us about development? These are measured using social indicators. Remember our mnemonic, the DIEHUN, where D stands for demographic, I it's income, E it's education indicator, H is health indicator, U it's urbanization, N it's nutrition. Today we focus on income, which is our I, and education, which is our E. Let's start with our income indicator. Now, what is income? Income refers to earnings received by individuals or households. One key measure is the income per capita. This is the average income per person. In South Africa, income per capita has increased over time, but growth is slow and uneven. Another key indicator is the income distribution indicator. This shows how income is shared. South Africa has a very high inequality, one of the highest Gini coefficients in the world. This means economic growth does not benefit everyone equally. Let's look at our education indicators. Now, education indicators, they measure access to and the quality of education. In South Africa, literacy rate is at 91%. This has improved over time, which has shown a steady increase. But perhaps let me just draw your attention to real stats. Now, according to the Statistics South Africa's latest General Household Survey, which is the GHS, the adult literacy rate sits at over 91%, with the national functional literacy rate for adults dropping to 8.7%. This reflects a steady long-term improvement, though there are still distinct demographic and educational divides across the country. Now, adult literacy, which is approximated at 3.8 to 4 million South African adults, remain functionally illiterate, with a slight higher rates observed among women, which is at 10.2% compared to men that are at 9.8% of adult illiteracy. We look at also matric completion. You'll find, according to the data and the publication by the Business Tech, it says literacy has improved. Statistics South Africa data show that nearly half, 7.1%, of the adult population aged between 20 and older do not have a grade 12 matric certificate.
Nearly half of South African adults still do not have a matric qualification, according to new data from Statistics South Africa. At the same time, millions of children continue to rely on no-fee schools and government school feeding schemes. Now, the latest General Household Survey released this week presents a mixed picture of the country's education system in 2025. It shows steady progress in access to schooling and literacy over time, but also highlights persistent inequality and a growing dependence on state support. The survey found that about 18.9 million people aged 20 and older did not have a grade 12 qualification in 2025. That means 47.1% of adults still lack matric despite improvements over the past 2 decades. To unpack these findings, I'm now joined by Professor Gezani Baloyi, the Head of Quality Assurance and Enhancement at UNISA's College of Graduate Studies. Prof, thank you for your time and for joining us this morning. So 18.9 million adults without a matric. This is not an education statistic, but rather an economic exclusion statistic. How do these two things intersect in terms of what South Africa is actually losing?
No, thank you very much, Katlego. Good morning to you, and also good morning to your viewers. Very true. 18 million South Africans do not have matric qualifications, despite the fact that a large amount of this country's budget is spent in education. And we do have a constitution which says every learner, or even adult learners, have a basic right to education. So these young adults do not have matric certificates. And in 2002, if we look at the trend, only 30.5% had matric certificate. And in 2025, only 52.9 had matric certificate, which means some youth are also employed. About 51.9% are employed. And 58.1 are not in education. They are not in education, they are not in training, and only 3 who are only in TVET colleges, and 5.2% of students they are at the universities. There are varied reasons in the viewers due to academic performance of learners in the schooling system. So, and I also, some of the learners, they do not have matric because of a family commitment due to poor some academic performance, and also others do not have money for fees, despite no fees schools which are there throughout the country. And some of the highlights which the report has indicated, which to me I think it's also a gain, it's an ECD. ECD is just an acronym which stands for Early Childhood Development. 36.3% have attended ECD facilities. It means we are getting the foundation right, because even during the SONA, the president has indicated that we need to capacitate ECD practitioners and also its curriculum. 50.2% of learners are not in preschool, they are at home. Of course, this could be a worrying factor, but remember, a large amount of this country's budget spending in education, but we are going to see this as a sort of reality. Some of the gains, if I can also share with you, Katlego, and viewers, there is also internet connectivity. Internet connectivity is mushrooming in households, and also formal housing, also access to electricity, and improved sanitation, and also piped water. I think these are some of the gains in which we can use them as a sort of advantage in advancing quality education to ensure that everybody can read and write.
Talking about those gains, Prof, I mean, functional illiteracy has dropped from 28.5% to 8.7% over 2 decades. Now, that's genuinely significant progress. Why does that achievement get so little public attention, and what drove that public attention not necessarily being given to some of these progresses that are made?
All right, some of these progresses, as you are indicating, it's due to public literacy campaigns, programs like Carry Good. Actually, I had an opportunity to participate in some of the programs. The University of South Africa carried a study, impact analysis of Carry Good program. Carry Good program, it's for adult learners. So we went to rural villages like Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, and also Free State. Actually, I also went to Limpopo, where most people can read and write. I think mass literacy Carry Good has also promoted this. They can read, they can write, and they can also function within the community. They can also be accountable in terms of supporting their children with homeworks at school and so on and so forth. Yeah, so there are so many gains. And also the University of South Africa has projects like going to correctional services under the leadership of Professor Mahalo and the other colleagues. So these initiatives are also driving a success. I think as a country, we can also capitalize on this, and we support the government
And you're speaking, Prof, about these shifts that we are seeing. I mean, you mentioned that in 2002, we had about 30.5% of South Africans having a matric, and that shifted to 52.9% in 2025. But we often talk about matric as the baseline. But is matric actually still the right measure of functional capability, especially in a modern economy, or has the world moved past what a matric qualification signals?
Yeah, I think you are raising an important issue here. During the SONA, the president spoke about innovation. It seems as if, as a country, we are leaning towards the so-called innovation. So innovation and also the TVET colleges. So TVET colleges will offer more practical training. Out of these 18 millions, I think majority of them have grade 10. So they can also go to TVET colleges or continue to engage with matric rewrite programs or attend public learning centers where they will be assisted to get their matric. But even if they do not have their matric, they can also be trained to have some skills or also competencies. But the trainings that we must give them must be sort of accredited. So it's also important to empower youth with innovation and also education and a strategic partnership or collaborations and issues of learnership. Learnership will expose learners to practical experience. And we have a global imperative initiatives like sustainable development. So it means institutions of higher learning or even the government, local government and the provincials, we need to support the sustainable development goals. Because as a country, we are also concerned with education for all. By 2030, which is a target here, we must have quality teaching and learning and also issues of vocational education and training and also innovation. And we need to remove barriers so that we have quality education. Everybody must be able to learn wherever they are.
You're speaking about SDGs and SDG for our targets of 2030. I mean, the current data is showing us that only 36% of children under 5 are in any formal learning environment. Given what we know, Prof, about brain development in those formative years, how much of the adult literacy problems that we're measuring today was actually locked in decades ago?
Yeah, of course, research and statistics have also shown some improvement in terms of this mass literacy. But if I can also quickly come back to early childhood development centers, about 36% of learners are in ECD practices. And the president has also encouraged us as a nation or the country to participate in capacity development programs for ECD or early childhood practitioners. So the report has also shown that. So it means there are so many things. But what is also worrying, it's adult education. We see adult education centers, of course, demising in some communities. So we need to resuscitate that, because research has also shown that when parents or adult learners participate in adult centers, there are so many games. They can be able to read, they can also be able to write. So we will be able to assist our children to read for meaning, which is also a challenge.
It certainly is a challenge. Prof, thank you so much for your time. We are hoping that with some of these discussions and these statistics that are found with where we currently are as a country, we are able to edge forward, especially when it comes to attaining those SDGs 2030. That was Professor Gezani Baloyi speaking to us there about nearly half of South African adults still not having a matric qualification.
The broader educational system still faces severe challenges, and studies show that a significant majority of learners, as high as 81% in grade 4, still struggle to read for meaning. But this being as it is, now if we look at the enrollment rates, the primary school enrollment is very high, almost universal, and secondary school enrollment is improving. Now, this shows better access to education. If we look at our years of schooling, we'll find that learners are spending more years in school. This is a positive development, but completion and the quality thereof still vary. Government spending on education, which is also another area. South Africa spends about 6% of its GDP on education. This is high compared to many developing countries. However, despite high spending, outcomes are not always strong. Quality and efficiency, they still remain a challenge. Okay, so now let's just pause the video and then answer the question that we have. I'll be back with the answer. The question reads, discuss the extent to which increased government spending on education in South Africa contributes to improved social development. Okay, so here is how you should answer. You can either look at it from the positive side, where you're saying it has increased and how it increased, the extent to which it increases, or you can look at the negative, where you're saying it's not really helpful by and large, or you can give us both the positive and as well as the negatives, and in this particular context then you'll be using words like however. So let's just look at the answers here. The question was, discuss the extent to which increased government spending on education in South Africa. So increased government spending on education, okay, increased government spending on education in South Africa contributes to improved social development. Contributes to improved social development. So how does an increase in government spending contribute towards an improved social development? On the positive impacts, you would agree with me that government spends more on education, then it improves access to education. It also increases the literacy rate. It develops the skills of the human capital. It leads to better employment opportunities. So that's how it improves social development, because it improves access to education, it increases the literacy rate, it develops skills and human capital, which obviously means that they will be able to secure more jobs. And these are the things that you are supposed to be discussing. And then it also leads to better employment opportunities on the positive side. And then its limitations now. You said you use the word like however. So you now say, however, it has suffered the following limitations, like poor quality of education, the education system on its own, though there's been an improvement, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done to align the curricula to the demands of the industry. Then inefficiencies in spending, inequality in access, where we said some people have access to education, some people they don't have access to education. A lot of times you will always find that there are some learners that fail to enroll in schools. So there is that unequal access to education. And then the outcomes do not always match investments. That's the limitation, that we have always had a lot of spending on education, but the outcomes have not really been matching the amount of investment that has been put in. Now, key to note, when you answer these 8-mark questions, especially the higher order questions, you are not supposed to list things. You are supposed to discuss, because the key word there was discuss the extent. So I would expect you that you need to give some description, some discussion around that particular subject. Remember, this is the danger. If you just outline facts or list facts like this, assuming that all of them are correct, you are marked, and you are only marked up to a maximum of 2. Okay, you only get a maximum out of 2, and 2 out of 8, that's 25%. It means that particular question was your response was a level 1 response, even though you got all the answers correct, but you ended up with a level 1 response because you did not discuss the extent, because the question, the verb there was discuss. So you need to understand that you must not list When you are dealing with the 8-mark questions, you must discuss. If the word says discuss, if the word says examine, then you must examine. Okay, so don't just list facts on your 8-mark questions in the exam. Okay, right. For your exams now, you need to remember that income per capita is the average income. Okay, and income distribution, it points on the level of inequality. Okay, and then literacy or enrollment or number of schooling years, these are education indicators. And then SA has spent heavily on education in the recent years, but the outcomes have remained uneven. So those are things that you need to remember in your exams. We have now covered income and education in our DIEHUN. Next, we are going to be looking at our healthy indicator, one of the most tested sections. If this video assisted you, remember to like, subscribe, and share with your classmates. See you in the next lesson. Have a good day.